Hello and welcome to That Talk with Tariro. Today on the show, we would want to unpack the issue of comprehensive sexuality education and mainly getting it from the perspective of young people. Oftentimes we've looked at this issue, but getting the adult view as well as getting the policymakers' views, because we do know that in Zimbabwe, comprehensive sexuality education is actually now part of the Zimbabwean curriculum, which is rolled out at primary as well as secondary education. And we do know, not just in Zimbabwe only, but when we are looking at East and Southern Africa, there have been extensive debates, mainly with parents not being comfortable to have adolescent boys and girls, or even having this as a part of the curriculum. So we would want to hear from young people, what are their views? And we are joined by Florida Rumbidzai Mapeto. She is from Adult Rep Clinic, where she is with the communications department there. Welcome to the talk.
Thank you for having me. Tara.
Yes, we would want to find out from you coming from an institution that also looks at these issues, but also you as a young person. When we are looking at comprehensive sexuality education, maybe let's start off by unpacking it. What exactly are we talking about?
Okay, so when we're talking about comprehensive sexuality education, we are talking about including or involving these issues of sexuality, of gender, safe and healthy relationships in our education system from a young age. Because I think for years it has been really problematic that we are taught things, we're taught biology, we're taught science, from a young age, but when it comes to really our bodies, our sexuality, it was something that was just covered up. And now, because of the landscape that we have, adolescents are getting pregnant, and even amongst themselves, they're engaging in sex because they really didn't understand what does it mean when I start going through puberty. All these topics were just given from a science perspective and they were not really humanized. So that is what comprehensive sexuality in essence is all about. And I'm glad that Zimbabwe has adopted it in our curriculum now. I think it came at the right time.
And from your perspective, maybe as a young person, how has this benefited young people?
To be honest, I feel like we are now more open to talk about sex. I mean, I can sit down with you and talk about issues that are affecting me as a young woman. I can talk about my period. It's not something that is taboo anymore. So it's really helped me. It's really helped even the conversations, knowing that I'm not alone in what I go through as a young woman, what I go through as a woman, what I go through as just a person who understands these issues. So I've also noted, like with a lot of the adolescent girls that we reach out to in the communities that we work, that even topics around contraception, it's not just about sex.
Where the issue for me comes is where sometimes when you're talking about comprehensive sexuality education and where parents then become maybe uncomfortable and where the resistance comes from is this issue about saying we're talking about sex. And CSE on its own, it's not about sex.
Yeah, it's not just about sex.
So for parents then to then get an understanding, when we are talking about CSE, the comprehensiveness, maybe unpack that to then say, when we're talking about this comprehensiveness, because the issue of sex, it's just a tiny bit, and sometimes it's actually not even mentioned. And then the age appropriateness of how it's rolled out, maybe unpack that for us.
Okay, so in comprehensive sexuality education, we talk about age appropriateness, knowing that from a certain age and child development, there's a time when they're comfortable with learning about certain things. What is the name of each body part? And there's nothing wrong with being able to describe what this body part is and what its name is, because it's part of our biology. So that should not be something that is nipped under the bud. Then we also talk about consent issues. We talk about sexual gender-based violence. Don't touch it's part of comprehensive sexuality education. So we're teaching them that your body is your right. You have rights over your body. No one should touch you inappropriately, and you have a right to speak out if anything happens to you. This is not supposed to happen. And we also teach about the Constitution. What does the law say about your rights as a child? What is supposed to happen? The chain of the reporting process, really. If you are abused, say, your parents, we do understand, Tari, that sometimes parents are perpetrators. We've seen it happening. It's not a secret. So through comprehensive sexuality education, we have this, the tree, I think it's called a tree of comfortable people that I can reach out to when I've been abused. So you've got your police, you've got the nearest person that you trust, you've got your friends, you've got an aunt, you've got an uncle, you've got the school system, you've got the church. So all of that is being taught in comprehensive sexuality education for the protection of the child in instances where sometimes even the parent is the perpetrator. Because our kuchi sina, we've removed the system of protective adults from a child. Kana chukuti mbereki ndiye akuperpetrator mwana. So in this case, what happens to those children? Because my parents are no defender. We do not want our children to know about this. I think it's from a point of privilege, really, which is unfair on any other child who does not have that access, or who does not have that same protection from their parents. So when we address issues of comprehensive sexuality education, we're also talking about respect, about who you are as a society. So we're also instilling the values that we have as a country in Zimbabwe. We're not diverting, because we don't exist in isolation, even as children. Tinobva communities that expect certain standards and things from us. So we also teach that how do you sort of integrate yourself as an individual into the community that you exist in, whilst also understanding your health, rights, and your responsibilities. Because I think Tino Klashirwa most of the time, because they say we talk about the rights so much, but we don't talk about responsibilities. But we do reinforce my responsibilities. This is as far as the community can carry you. This is as far as the church can carry you. This is as far as the school system can carry you. But this is also your responsibility now. Take care of yourself. Look out for yourself, look out for others. So I think it's a very broad topic, Tari, that we cannot just limit to kuta vada kudzavana zvesex kuchikoro. Let's look at it from a broader perspective, really.
Our discussion continues after the break. Welcome back. We continue with our discussion. Florida, when we went for the break, you were speaking about the issue of rights with responsibility. So as young people, when you're talking about the rights that you have, that you deem to be, these are the rights that we would want, but we also need to be responsible. What are those?
So when we're talking about rights, everyone has a right by virtue of being born in Zimbabwe. Everyone has a set of rights that are enshrined for you: the right to health, to education, access to certain services, access to safe shelter as a child. But in those rights, there's also the responsibility, because just because something is accessible or is a right to you doesn't mean that you need to abuse it.
Yeah.
So if I am told that I have a right to health, it doesn't mean that I now need to abuse that right. Or I can abuse medication. I can just take these things when I want and use them however. Because what then that does, it opens doors for even those who also don't mean well, especially in the case of children, abusing those same rights using them against each other. So as children, as young people, we emphasize more on nyaya rights so that we understand that they do exist, because they're being abused anyway, even though everyone has them. What we then say after they've understood those rights, we then start talking about the responsibility, so that once a person understands what the law says about them, their entire existence, it's easier now to tell them, but do you know that outside of this, this is where you come in as a person. You meet the Constitution halfway. I have a right to health, but what does it mean for me as a young person? If I'm under 18, it still then means that I cannot just walk into a place and say, give me this drug. I want to use it, even if it's illegal substances. Why is that? Because Munano Toyenda and says, I have a right. The law says I can access this. But does it mean that you should now just be afforded an opportunity to take whatever? So this also comes back to the issues of sexuality, to issues of comprehensive sexuality education. We are teaching you that the rights exist, yes, but more on the responsibility aspect, so that even if somebody else comes in and tries to abuse you, you know what your responsibility is, but you also know what your rights are.
And for those parents who are actually skeptical about comprehensive sexuality education, who equate sexuality to sex, which is completely different, how do you reassure them to then say, CSE, comprehensive sexuality education, is actually beneficial to your child? They're actually not being taught about sex, but they're being taught about the whole broad spectrum of sexual reproductive health.
So I think we did have this conversation. Sex and sexuality are two different things. And the reason why we want this to be a conversation is we also understand that our parents, our parents, you were not also taught these things. So you also don't understand. So there's no way that you would come and teach me things that you also do not have enough knowledge on. That is why it has been formalized into our education system, so that it comes from a place where this is your natural biology. As a person, a boy, a man, a woman, this is who you are. This is your biological makeup. That's why it was called comprehensive sexuality education, because sexuality is part of being human. By virtue of being born, you already have your sexuality that is there. So it's not about sex. It's not about people engaging in the coitus as people think it is. No, it's about just understanding that as a person, I'm Florida, yes, but I'm a girl. There's a reason why I'm different from the next person. At some point at puberty, I will grow breasts. Why is that? What is happening to my body? Why am I seeing these changes? So I think parents need to understand we are reaching out to you. This is us helping each other, meeting each other halfway. We understand why it's scary, because you were not afforded the opportunity. Had you also been given that same opportunity and known better, probably you'd have made better decisions for yourself. So we also want that for ourselves. We want that for young people. We want that for our adolescent girls as well.
And looking at comprehensive sexuality on its own, yes, we do know it's now part of the curriculum. But I'm also looking at parents having a role to play. When, as a child, you have come home, I need to complement what you would have learned at school through those open discussions, breaking that culture of silence between parents and children. Even me making sure that my child does understand their body, making sure that my child is well prepared. They need to know that as a girl, a period is going to come at one time. You're going to menstruate. I need to have a role that I'm also playing. So in your own perspective as a young person, how do you see the role of parents coming in to complement the education system when it comes to the rolling out of comprehensive sexuality education?
I think we go back to the issue of charity begins at home, because we don't want to take out the rights of parents in this, because I think as a parent, you also have your hopes and aspirations for your child. And some of the things might be taught at school, and there might be a whole syllabus that talks about these things, but you also have your own personal values, and you've got your own cultural and religious beliefs that you adhere to as a family. but we would want them to meet with their children halfway, because once there's that clash, Tari, that is when we hear the stories of young children who are then trying to rebel because they are being challenged in the world. They're not existing at home only. They go to school, they're on social media every day, they're seeing what is happening in the world. So we want to encourage the discourse with parents. Have time with your children, and you realize that they know more than what you think they do. We are living in the information age. It's no longer that time when you just go next door and then you play there and there's nothing. You're playing with your ball and the sky is blue and you come back home. Every other time you leave the house, there's a lot of information that is out there, and our children have access to it. We have access to it. We know more than you think. We just want you to talk to us about it in a safe and comfortable environment.
Definitely, we will continue with our discussion. We heard from the young person there telling us as parents to say, we actually know more than what you think. So as parents, let's open that dialogue with our children. Join us after the break. Welcome back. We continue with our discussion. Today we are looking at the issue of comprehensive sexuality education. We do know it has been now rolled out in our schools. It's part of our curriculum. Florida, when we are looking at the issue of emancipation of our children, share with us.
So this is a very interesting and controversial topic, because where it emanates from is deeply rooted in a lot of things. My experience working at ARC and understanding, are we ready to confront the fact that not every parent becomes a parent by choice? Enough to say at some point children should vote or look for legal channels to be emancipated from their families or their parents. Andichazvikwanise family. I'm not safe with them. I'm being abused, so I probably need to leave and be free.
How does that happen?
Well, I think in Zimbabwe, I can't speak in the case of Zimbabwe, but there are countries that have actually adopted this, that children can be given up by their families, or they can apply to be emancipated from their families.
Why would someone want to be emancipated? I think you're staring a hornet's nest here. I think unpack it for us more in terms of the work that you have seen, the children that you have actually witnessed who would want to be emancipated from their families. I think for many people it's a foreign concept, if I must say.
So I'll take it from an SGBV perspective, really, because what you realize, I don't know psychologically if there's something in there where a lot of issues of sexual gender-based violence were not dealt with. They become a cycle. So you hear stories where a parent was probably abused as a child and they had a child at an early age. And because of that, they were not given the choice, really, to say, I do not want to have this child, and they ended up conceiving out of that rape or a sexual violation. And now this child becomes an adult. But these issues that you did not deal with, they don't go away. That's why we always say that when it comes to issues of sexual violence, we need to give a comprehensive service of psychotherapy. It's not just about medical, it's not just about reporting to the police. It's also realizing that there's lives that can really be ruined because of it. So sometimes we realize that the children that we see, the adolescents that come to our clinic, they're a result of broken families. And then now in extensive therapy with the support systems, you also find out that there's some deep-rooted issues. I didn't want to have this child. I had them when I was young. I probably was not afforded the option to terminate when I wanted to. Now this is the child that we have here, and I am honestly done with the child. So unfortunately, children know. We can sense when we are wanted and when we're not wanted. At some point, those things start coming up. And now when the law comes in play, and I say, if Zimbabwe was to give me that option to say, you know what, you can opt to come out of this because your parent did not want you in the first place, because it will always show. I know it's very brutal to say it, and I know a lot of people, even sitting at home, it's a very difficult conversation, but people need to acknowledge that not every child that exists right now was wanted. That is why we are saying children by choice, family planning, 2020, 2023, because we do understand that this is deeply rooted. It becomes a problem. But for some children, you actually realize it becomes safer for them if they decide to go the emancipation route, because the abuse that they become subjected to. Imagine the whole society. Ndiye uya mwana. This is that child from that rape story that happened that other time. Imagine growing up, because it's not just about the parent. I know a lot of people believe, oh, you need to accept that you were given a child, it's God's gift. And then that gift grows up and understands that it was an unwanted gift. It will also shape how they relate in the community, how they identify with other children, how they grow really. So now you realize these children start coming up and they'll tell you, because our law doesn't have anything set up clearly on that, but they will say it. I really wish I didn't have a mother. I really wish I didn't have to have these as my parents, because deeply rooted, we know where it's coming from. So I know it's a very difficult topic to have, but I think we can start the conversation from understanding that when people say they're not ready to have children, we need to accept where it's coming from, and we're not just protesting for a fetus when we say, I'm pro-life, I'm pro this. We are also supposed to look at the whole makeup of this child that we are saying needs to be brought on earth. Who is going to be responsible for them? Who is going to safeguard them from a world that did not want them anymore? Because until you're 18, but some are applying for this in other countries from the age of 11 to say, okay, no.
But that's foreign foreign concept in our African setting or in our Zimbabwean cultural setting. Do you see that being possible?
I don't know yet. It's something that, like I said, it's a difficult conversation to have. But I think it should be had anyway, because by us saying we'll not accept it, it doesn't mean that psychologically it's not happening. It doesn't mean that we are not seeing its effects in our society. Because these same parents, some of them end up perpetrating their children because they did not want them. These children also become misfits in society because they know they were unwanted. So what life are we really protecting or preserving when we say as a society, so I think we need to have the conversation, and at some point maybe we'll consider it, even though it's a long stretch, but I think it's worth having. It's a conversation really worth having.
And what would you say is your final message to Zimbabweans, mainly looking at the issue of comprehensive sexuality education that we talked about, as well as just a word in terms of this emancipation of children that we spoke about?
Okay, I think my last words would be, we all have a responsibility to play. It's not just about Florida, it's not just about development partners, it's not about Tari, it's everyone, because these are issues that we can't escape from no matter how much we try to run. So let's talk about this, let's find out what we can add, we add our voice as parents, as young people, on what we want to see, the change that we want to see in our curriculum, in our education system. And also in terms of emancipation of children, I would say before it even becomes a conversation, as a child, you have your rights. You are allowed to speak up when you're not protected in the family system. Probably you were born in a family that you feel does not really want you. There is the whole system, a victim-friendly system that has been set up for you. There are hospitals that you can rush to. You can rush to the police. You can rush to social welfare. There are entities and partners that are there to help you. Reach out to Childline, reach out to ARC, reach out to Save the Children. There are so many. It's your right to say, you know what, this is the family that I was born into, but I'm not protected and I need help. Because we understand that your safety net sometimes might be the same net that is also abusing you.
Indeed, that's a key message that's coming. What I really got from her is to then say, oftentimes, when as children there within a family and you are facing abuse, maybe your mother was raped and you were born a product of rape. And sometimes with mothers, psychologically, they're actually affected. And for them to give you that kind of love, I think some parents would want to be emancipated from you as a child, and you as a child also, you would want to be emancipated. Indeed, a foreign concept, and I'm hoping that in future we'll find time to come back again and explore that issue further. Until next week, it's goodbye.